Hello and welcome back to another Warlords of Draenor video. So this time I'm going to be talking about Darker Nights. So Blizzard basically introduced these back into a few of the old world zones in the Warlords of Draenor beta without really telling anyone that they were going to do so. And I've got to say, they actually do look a lot better in my opinion. They're certainly not perfect, but it's definitely a move in the right direction. So essentially the changes are only happening in Red Ridge and Elwyn. And what you'll of course notice is that the actual lighting does change when you get into nighttime. Currently the way it works is when it hits nighttime, the actual in-game lighting doesn't change. All that changes is the skybox. So of course that doesn't really make much sense when you think about it. And it's definitely a lot more atmospheric. It's still very playable in terms of how bright it is. And in my opinion, it's actually still too bright. It's not quite at the vanilla level of dull. And I think it needs to go a little bit more darker so that it's a bit just more like that, because honestly, while it is better, it's still not completely immersive. You know, there is definitely more light than there should be. And I know that most games at night do that. That's totally cool and it should be done to ensure the game is playable at night. But right now it's, I think, still just to the degree where it looks really unnatural. It looks like the ground is sort of glowing a little bit, and that kind of gets on my nerves. Anyway, so they at least have made a positive change. Now, the old lighting system that we currently have in the game is frankly awful, in my opinion. You know, night times just, they look absurd. If this new Warlords one looks like it glows a tiny bit, well then the old one was like heavily bloody irradiated, you know, with that trademark kind of nuclear glow going off. It was insane. It was absolutely mad. It was nearly as bright as it was at midday, at like midnight. Just that, of course, you know, there was no sun. And that was immersion breaking as hell, and I'm very glad that they're at least going away from that. It's funny though, I didn't notice how bad the old lighting was in some of the Azeroth zones because, well, I just assumed that I haven't really leveled in Elwyn Forest at night for probably a very long time. So absolutely, this is a complete improvement. Now, Blizzard's reason for keeping nights bright is actually that they think it's more playable. They don't want to get into the situation where people don't want to play the game at night because they find it hard to see things. I think that's absolutely a worthy concern, but it's, you know, it's fine. They've never came anywhere close to having nights that aren't particularly playable, and if they're worried about people with maybe eye issues or something like that, well, here's the thing, you don't want to design your game around eye issues. You want to design your game, I'm assuming that someone is using kind of like the, you know, the standard kit human eye, but then what you want to do is provide loads of accessibility options, so that if people do have an eye issue or something, that they're able to just check a box, which changes that Darker Nights thing. In my opinion, that's what should be there. So really, what they should do is just have the current version of the beta's Darker Nights as the kind of accessibility version of Darker Nights, and then have a slightly more extreme version of it. I don't mean extreme, that's too, well, extreme of a word, but maybe have a slightly more pronounced effect for the actual Darker Nights. I'll throw in some footage here of what I think would look quite good, and this is just me tweaking around with some of the lighting settings. It's using a machinima tool in the live clients, so I think this is roughly what things should look like from a sort of immersion standpoint. But you know, it's good that they are actually making progress with this. And this is only the very first version of the Darker Nights. They did say they'd be iterating a little bit. That was, I think, 1 or 2 weeks ago. There was a blue tweet talking about them trying out Darker Nights, you know, at some point. So at least that's happened. Hopefully they will, you know, just keep it cracking and we will get really nice Darker Nights, because it is just so helpful for the immersion of the world, isn't it? No one wants to be running around at 4 AM in broad daylight, because that's just not something that should happen. Now, moving into Draenor, I have not particularly noticed much of a difference between night and day, other than, say, the skybox or something like that. In the case of Shadowmoon Valley, it always looks like it's kind of twilight in terms of the actual lighting of the zone. I suppose that actually works in the context of Shadowmoon Valley. As for Frostfire Ridge, well, it does look, I suppose, quite a bit more dull at night, and the way that works is just the sort of color of the light that's shining off the snow, and in a way sort of doesn't look as bright, so I suppose technically the snow itself looks a little bit more of a dull color. rather than maybe if it's at daytime it will be a bit more bright. I think that works for Frostfire Ridge, though it honestly isn't incredibly pronounced and it could be a lot stronger. I think that Frostfire Ridge could certainly benefit from maybe a bit of a darker night because of the way that it's got so much lava going on and lots of like flaming pyres and stuff like that. So I think nighttime, or at least nighttimes that are a little bit darker, would look pretty cool in Frostfire Ridge. Now Nagrand, I think, is certainly a zone that needs darker nights. You know, it's more of a zone that's kind of grounded in reality when you think about it, and just a part of that means that it needs to have reasonably dark nights so that there's enough of a change there just to make things feel decently believable. As for Talador, well, again, I know it's got the kind of whole purple misty thing going on, but I still think Talador should be darker at night because that just makes sense. In fact, the only place that doesn't need as much of a variation is Shadowmoon Valley, to be frank, because Shadowmoon Valley has got the whole Twilight thing going on, and its current day-night cycle in terms of changing up the skybox is actually really cool. It's the one zone that's fine. I just hope that this Darker Nights change does make its way into Draenor and doesn't end up just being kind of left behind in the old world. So that's basically it for this video. I just thought I'd give you guys an update on the current situation with Darker Nights. I'll update you again if Blizzard do anything. But for now, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.